What's up everybody, I'm HoopsandHipHop. So a few weeks ago I made a video detailing my official predictions for the 8th generation of Pokemon, and in that video one of the predictions I made was about the starter Pokemon. In that video, I talked about what I thought would be most likely in terms of the starter Pokemon that we would see for the next generation, and while that is really fun to speculate and try to guess correctly, I also really just want to talk about what would be amazing to see and what would be my dream picks in terms of starter Pokemon, and that's exactly what we're looking at today. Today we are going to be looking at my personal top 5 dream starter Pokemon for Generation 8, and because these are my dream picks, there aren't really any requirements I'm giving myself in terms of what I am picking. I am simply looking at different ideas and pieces of fan art that have presented new ideas for starter Pokemon, and basically deciding what ideally I would like to see if I personally were given the pick on what starter Pokemon could appear in the next Pokemon game. New starter Pokemon are always some of the most fascinating things in every new generation, so it's always fun to talk about what we could potentially see. So with all of that being said, why don't we go ahead and just get started? Oh wait, you know what? There is actually one more thing I need to talk about before we officially get started, and that would be the honorable mention for the video. In last week's video on my top 10 new Pokemon for Generation 8, I talked about the concept of a Bighorn Sheep fire starter, and I showed off this amazing fan art of that concept from the Pokemon Sage fan game. Now, while this is definitely something ideally that I would like to see that would most certainly make my video in any other situation, the fact that I talked about it just 1 week ago made me want to kind of highlight some other ideal picks as well, so while I wanted to give it an honorable mention, it's not going to make the top 5 for that reason. With all of that being said though, let's go ahead and officially get started. In at number 5, my first pick would be the idea of a water snake starter Pokemon, and this particular piece of fan art by Diego Guilherme on DeviantArt is an excellent concept of what I would like to see. In my Generation 8 predictions video, I talked about what I thought was going to be most likely given certain circumstances, and the water starter I officially chose as my prediction for Generation 8 was a water snake or some kind of other water reptile. There's a number of different reasons why I think it legitimately could happen, but as for why I would want it to happen is because it just simply seems like a water snake would be a novel and somewhat unique idea for a water starter. Naturally, when you think of the concept of snake Pokemon, some of the typings that would immediately come to mind would be poison, grass, and maybe even ground, so a water snake is definitely not going to be your first thought when thinking of this type of Pokemon. And even though it's not the most crazy idea in the world because there are actually water-based snakes in our own world, I think it's just interesting enough that it could make for a novel idea for a starter Pokemon, and if we do ever get one, this particular design by Diego is something that I would definitely like to see. Now, just a few moments before we officially started this video, I obviously just mentioned how I would like to see a Ram fire starter Pokemon, and I made it my honorable mention. However, even though that idea in particular is not going to make this top 5, the idea of a Ram starter Pokemon will, and at number 4, we have the idea of a Grass-type Ram starter Pokemon. When this design made by Zerudez on DeviantArt was first put up on the internet as part of a very big and very convincing Sun and Moon leak in 2016, a lot of people instantly fell in love with it, myself included. I just really love the idea of Pokemon, and starter Pokemon in particular, based on big game type of animals like bighorn sheep, rams, deer, moose, whatever you want to call it. This design in particular is absolutely adorable, and I think the grass typing fits it really well. But whether it be a grass type or a fire type like we showed with the honorable mention, I think a ram-based starter Pokemon of any type would be an absolutely phenomenal idea, and it's something that I am desperately hoping to see come Generation 8 or just the future of Pokemon in general. Right in the middle of our list at number 3 is another fake starter leak from a while back that I instantly fell in love with as soon as I saw it, and that would be this concept of a bunny fire starter by the artist 50 Shades of Heliolisk. Now, the idea of a fire starter being based on a bunny is just a really appealing one in and of itself, because not only does it fit that whole fire starters based on the Chinese zodiac theory that we've touched on numerous times, but it just seems like the fire type would go really well with a bunny rabbit Pokemon, and this particular design by 50 Shades of Heliolisk shows how seamlessly and perfect those two things can blend together. Now, the thing that I really love about this design in particular are all of the little details that just seamlessly weave their way into this design and into the body type of a rabbit Pokemon in general. You've got the black cotton tail that resembles billowing smoke, and you've also got the ears as well that resemble the shape of a small flame. You've also got the color scheme of this Pokemon in general, which just really just looks so fantastic, and overall, if we were to get a bunny fire starter, I would like it to be this design and almost no other, because I really feel like this is the perfect way to do this type of Pokemon. And as far as the Generation 8 factor goes, I think a bunny Pokemon is just as likely in this generation as any other generation as well. It's the type of thing that could really happen at any time, so please Game Freak, let it be later this year in Generation 8. Now, in our runner-up spot at number 2 is a Pokemon that I guess you could say is kind of a different pick, but that's the reason why it made it so high up on the list in the first place, and that would be this design of a water starter based around coral. Now, this is yet another fake Generation 8 starter leak that we saw several months back, and at the time when people were kind of giving their opinions on whether or not they were real or fake and how they liked them, it seemed like this guy was the least popular of the three. But personally, if I had to pick, I would say that it's easily my favorite, and it's something that I would love to see happen in Generation 8. This design specifically really has a lot of character and emotion based on its concept art, and I think that is something that always makes any kind of Pokemon just infinitely more appealing. The other thing that really makes me like the idea of this design as well, though, is just the simple fact that it's different to what we normally see in a starter Pokemon. Not only is it based on the type of thing that we don't usually see as inspiration for a starter Pokemon, but just its look in general at face value is very different compared to actual starter Pokemon and compared to the general starter Pokemon aesthetic, if you will. And that's what makes me love this design so much, is because it's different and it just really feels new and exciting because of that. And I really feel like Pokemon could use a good dose of different that feels new and exciting compared to what we got in, say, Generation 7, where they did something different, but it just didn't really feel the same and just wasn't really as good as what we had known before. So in conclusion, I really feel like this type of design could bridge the gap between those two ideas and give us something that is different, but something that also feels true to the Pokemon formula and doesn't feel like it strays away too much from that in a negative way. And if we got anything like this at all in Generation 8, I would be unbelievably excited. And for the number 1 pick, the number 1 Pokemon I would like to see as a starter in Generation 8, if I had my choice, would be this Fire Bear from the previously mentioned Sun and Moon leak by Zerudez once again on DeviantArt. Now, as I was putting this list together and I was going over different Fakemon designs and concepts to consider, I really tried to avoid putting more than one Pokemon from a particular Fakemon starter group into this video, because I wanted to provide some variety and not just pick an entire starter line and plop them into the video, because that's not really that fun. However, with this specific group of starters from that infamous Sun and Moon leak a few years ago, I honestly had no choice but to include 2 out of the 3, because all of them are just so good, and when it comes to this Fire Bear, it's just the epitome of what I want to see in a starter Pokemon. The thing that drew me to this fire bear so much in particular though was just its friendly appearance and disposition. It really just looks like a down-to-earth, calm, very kind type of Pokemon, and if I had to describe myself and the qualities that I enjoy, I would also say that I'm kind of a very down-to-earth, quiet, calm sort of person, and I see a lot of those qualities in this Pokemon, so it just seems like a match made in heaven for me personally if I were to pick a starter Pokemon to go on my Pokemon journey with. There's also the fact that this design is freaking amazing, and even though it doesn't fit into the whole Chinese zodiac thing that we briefly mentioned earlier, that's obviously only a theory anyway, and Game Freak can do whatever the heck they want, and if that supposed theory were to be disproven once and for all, I think the bulk of the people who support it would be fine with that happening anyway if it meant we were going to get an amazing starter Pokemon like this. And above all, it is absolutely my #1 pick that I am just dying to see happen for a starter Pokemon in Generation 8. And there we have it, everybody. Those were my top 5 dream starter Pokemon for Generation 8. Now, as I'm sure you all know, the possibilities are nearly endless for what we could get in terms of starter Pokemon, but it's also nearly impossible to predict what we're actually going to see as well, so even though this is really what I would like to see, this video was mostly just for fun because who knows if we'll actually see anything remotely close to what I just talked about. If you guys did enjoy the video though, be sure to give it a like because it really helps out and is very much appreciated, and let me know down in the comments below what your dream starter Pokemon is for the next generation. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe as well for more Pokemon content every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and if you enjoy Pokemon music as well, check me out on Spotify because following me there directly helps me here, and it's always very much appreciated. With all of that being said though, I will be back on Thursday for another video, so be sure to hit that notification bell so you can be notified as soon as it goes live, and until then, as always, you know I love you guys, and I will smell you guys later.